Started, but I'll quickly introduce myself for those that don't know me. I'm Jason Fletcher, or better known as Fletch, coach development lead for Squash New Zealand. And tonight's session's about the Superchamps, and I think it's a great opportunity. I think I've been lucky to be involved in a number of teams that have gone away to nationals, some successful and some unsuccessful. I think we've gone away with a great team and sometimes come away with nothing but a hangover, and other teams that have sort of looked not quite so sharp on paper, but actually done really well over the weekend. So, and also come away with a hangover as well. But I definitely believe it's one of the best things that offerings that Squash New Zealand have, and it's a great opportunity for anybody at any grade to find as a team and go away and become a national champion, regardless of your experience or your skill level. So I think it's a fantastic event to be involved with, regardless whether you get through to nationals or have a great time at the district event. So it's a real pleasure actually to have co-presenting, or main presenter with us is Dave Clarke. Dave's former national coach and coaching director. And so I'll get him to introduce himself and get things started. Up to you, Clarkey.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everybody. Great to have you here on this webinar this evening in and around Superchamps. Firstly, just apologies about the bald head and the light shining off it. Probably should have issued you with some dark glasses all before you come on, but I just have to make do with the lighting here. This evening is really going to be about giving you guys some information to make that journey for you and your players a really good experience for everyone concerned. So whether you're a coach or a manager, player, you know, hopefully there's something here tonight that you can take from it to make things a better experience for all. There will be a couple of tasks along the way. Unfortunately, if you, as Jason knows, if you join in with anything with me, you won't be sitting idle, as it were. So there will be a little bit of interaction at different times over the course of this webinar. So watch out for those. As Jason said, my name's Dave Clarke. I'm the ex-national coach and stuff. I've been coaching professionally 40 years or so, even though I only look 25. But obviously mainly in the sport of squash, and I've done a huge amount of coach development with multiple other sports as well in different guises over many years. So yeah, great to be here. Oh, are you muted, Jace?
Yep. Oh. Ready to go now. Hey, thanks, Clarkey. Just before we get started to things, please feel free to chuck in the chat any questions that you may have, and at any time we'll try and handle those. But there will also be an opportunity right at the end to ask some questions as well. So Dave, you know, I've just seen at my club the notices just go up for getting names for people interested in the Superchamps. So where do we start? You know, asking for names, but what's next?
Yeah, I think the key thing is that we need to get pretty well organised right from the word go here. I think one of the difficulties can be that we don't get as organised as we should be at the very start, and that can cause a few issues along the way. So first things first, we need to organise a meeting, and that's not a meeting after we've had first training. That's a meeting before we've had first training. What we need to try and understand is what is the goal for the players that want to play Superchamps, that want to play in this team. If you're the coach or the manager, if you're kind of the reasons why you're playing this event aren't aligned, then that can kind of start things off on the wrong foot. So your first task for this evening is to write down in the chat. So it'll just be one or two words essentially. Okay, the reason why you take part in Superchamps. Okay, what's your why? Why do you play it? Okay, why do you play squash at Superchamps? Okay, so if you can just in that chat, everyone just pop in 1-2 words, the reasons why you play Super Champs. Away you go. Cool, they're coming in now. Nicely. Cool. Great. So we're getting some good feedback in, and we'll note that kind of most of that there is really about the team aspect and opportunity to play as a team. Love the team play. It's fun. My teammates are the best. Being involved to improve your coaching and help others develop. Fantastic. Club competition, team environment. So you'll notice there's only once there that winning is mentioned. So I think it's really important if you're the coach or the manager of a team, if you're hell bent on winning and the other one is about more and the other players are about more the experience as a team and the social aspect and playing together, that competition and team spirit and fun. We need to make sure that as coaches and managers, we're aligned in that respect. So good conversation to start with as a coach or a manager is to sit there and say, okay, why are we playing Super Champs, everyone? And then we can all get lined up from the word go. Winning is nice, but you can see that it isn't the be all and end all as to why people play Super Champs. And we find that almost across the board in everything that we do in every sport. It's very rarely about winning. And although we do hear that mentioned quite a bit at Super Champs. Okay, so we need to make sure we understand the why. The other things that we need to do is we need to understand who we have in our team. So let's say we've got a D grade team and we've got one 63-year-old and we've got a 25-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 12-year-old, and another. Essentially, you've got a wide range of people in there, so you need to understand who you have in front of you in that respect, because training for someone that's 65 or someone that's 12 or someone that's 25 might look slightly different. So we may have to make allowances for the differences within our team. Okay, so it isn't always necessarily a one size fits all. So, particularly obviously if it was me and Jason you were training, we might have to do a few less than the 25-year-old who might be bounding around and doing a few more. So we need to understand that aspect. And probably the third thing about getting organised is we need to have a communication set up. So you need to agree how you're going to communicate and what the process is for that. So whether you use an app or you use WhatsApp or another different way of communicating, you need to agree what that is. I have seen various difficulties arise when you have two people that have played each other in the team decide that they think something's a good idea without a discussion with the team, and suddenly that's become the rule, and then we start to get dissent and difficulty and arguments, and we want it to be fun. We want it to be a great team experience. So how you're going to communicate and who's responsible as the coach and the manager and what their responsibilities are is important to just set those expectations and set those in place right from the word go. So if you can get those three things sorted, so understand who you've got in front of you, get your communication sorted, and what is the goal? Why are we there? Those three things really important in your first steps.
Yeah, thanks, Clarky. Probably not many things we think about really. We'll just get the names and get into it. So we've done all that. We've sort of, found out who's in the team, set up our communication, what our goals are. What else do we need to be aware of? What else do we need to consider?
Well, we know with Super Champs there are some rules and regulations so around it, and obviously every year they can be contentious, and kind of understanding when the cut-off dates are, those types of things, understanding what the rules are around the players that you can play or bring in, and those types of things should somebody get injured, and making sure that it isn't just in the hands of the manager. Okay, so the coach and the manager should be across all of the rules, and also the players should know these too. So less of a responsibility on them around that from an organisational standpoint, but everybody should have an understanding of some of those key rules. Okay, not saying that they need to know everything, but it's key. It's important that they know those, because leaving it in one person's hands who are using those for the first time can go awry. So probably one of the key things that you need to be aware of is know those event rules. Don't put them all on one player, and make sure the key ones, are set in stone, that you know what you need to do and what needs to happen.
Yeah, a copy of those rules are on the Squash NZ website as well. I think the cut-off dates are probably the big one. I've seen players miss out because they haven't either been on the grading list, or if the moved clubs, they haven't changed them over in time, and that's caused all sorts of problems. And so it's probably a key one to consider, especially in smaller clubs where they do combine sometimes.
Yeah.
Just thinking about, the rules, we've got our team. Anything else, Clarkey, that we need to think about?
Yeah, so obviously you want it to be a fantastic experience for all. So obviously the logistics piece also comes into play. So if you're the coach, you're the only coach and there's no manager, or if you're a manager, you need to be thinking about the accommodation, the travel and food, and those aspects of the trip. So ideally you want to try and get a booking in early if you can. Please try and make sure it's got cooking facilities if that's possible. It's kind of can be make life a little bit more tricky and a little bit more difficult sometimes if it doesn't have those facilities as well. And you need to get organised in that respect, in and around food, because sometimes you might be playing, you might run late, and are you going to be able to get food for everybody after you've played, or are you hunting around at 10 o'clock at night looking for a fast food outlet to feed people that have just had a hard game? So you need to make sure that you got something in place in and around the food, and getting hold of that, so that obviously all the players can be fed properly, and obviously that the accommodation is right for the people that you have in the team. The cheapest isn't necessarily always your best option, I would say, in my experience. So you need to be onto that, okay? And if you're traveling as well, just allow plenty of time at either end of things. So just make sure that you're not kind of traveling to plan to get there a couple of hours before your first match on the first day, or an hour before your first match on the first day. If you've been in the car for 4 or 5 hours and you're expecting everyone to jump out and jump straight on the court within the next hour, you're going to have a few stiff legs and a few tired bodies jumping out the car. So just make sure you allow time. And then the other thing is, those weekends, they can be really tough. It's like I know it's not the world champs, as it were, but it's effectively the club world champs, almost Commonwealth Games type, because you potentially can have 3, 4, 5 really, really tough matches over the course of the weekend. So you need to be thinking that that players, after they've played, have got some snacks on hand. So if you've got muesli bars or jet planes, 20 minutes, chocolate milk, 20 minutes after they've played, try and get something in them to help their recovery. So important that you're trying to make sure that people are having the best chance to recover where they can, and as we say, if you've got some things ready to go and they've got all their water and they're hydrated and all of that stuff in place, it might not seem important at the time because you might not be used to doing that kind of thing. But if you've got 4 or 5 hard matches over the course of the weekend and it's all coming down to the wire, in the fifth, you do need to make sure that you've given yourself the best chance to recover. Okay, and a nice carbohydrate meal within 2 hours of that big effort. Okay, so those are some of the things that you need to be thinking about, which is again around logistics side of things. Okay, which can make or break your weekend. Okay, so can have a huge impact on it.
I can relate to cheapest is not always the best. I think a couple of places I've stayed in have been like prison cells. 3 single beds. If you roll over, you're in somebody else's bed. So you can definitely relate to that, and also trying to find food at some area late at night because you had a late match.
Just needs a bit of pre-planning, a bit of thinking before you go, just to make life easier for everyone.
Right. So you've talked earlier about the composition of your team, communication. The composition, of all sorts of different age and stage of players. So what about the on-court stuff, the training stuff? What are things we have to think about there?
Yeah, so planning training, you need to be really smart about how you go about this. Couple of things that we want to be thinking about. First of all, we want it to be fun. Okay, you've all put in there fun, team spirit, fun. Love the team play. That's what you put in is your why. So training should be fun. It shouldn't be that, we've got an hour and 20 minutes of court time, got 2 courts back to back. We're doing Boast and drives for half an hour. Okay, people are going to be bored out of their brains after 5 minutes of that. So we need to make sure when we're planning training, it's fun. It also needs to be appropriate for the group that you have. So if you're running a B grade training or if you're running an F grade training, that would look significantly different in the scheme of things. We need to understand, those bodies that we have in front of us. But also, the key thing, coaching, if you're the coach of the team, coaching is essentially change. Coaching isn't stay the same. So your training needs to be, as much as you can, it needs to be impactful in some way. So it's contributing to the performance of your team down the track. And a variety of you will have different times. So you might have 4 weeks before the start. You might have 8 weeks. You might train once a week. You might train twice a week. Okay, you'll have various kind of opportunities to get together, and those times need to be carefully thought through to get the most from them. Okay, so they need to be fun, they need to be appropriate, and they need to be impactful. Now, if you're coaching a team over that 6 to 8 weeks, you need to think about 2 to 3 things over that period of time that you think are going to help you make a difference. Okay. Now, if you're coaching an E grade or an F grade team, or a C grade or a D grade team, those things are going to be quite different about where you believe that you can make the most impact for your team. Okay, so that's one of the key things that we have to focus on. We also always have to finish off with some sort of game or some sort of activity which is squash related. So whether it's 3-quarter court or a game or a condition type game, people come there to play squash, and it's important that that they can play at training, so that training isn't all just routines and running court sprints. Okay, that type of thing. It's important that they get a chance to have a play at the end of each training or during part of that training. So what we're going to get you to do now, as we said, this is always a little interactive. I want you to think about a B grade, C grade, D grade, E grade, F grade team. So in the chat, you'll just write B, and then I want you to write down one thing that you think you could coach that might be impactful. And then C grade, one thing that you think you could coach that might be impactful. And this can be men's or ladies teams. Okay, so, and again, so I want you to go down and I want you to put one thing that you think could make a difference in each team. Okay, so whether you're coaching a B, C, D, E, F team. Okay, so that's five things that we want you to come up with, and we want you to put that in the chat, and we'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to have a think about that, and then start putting them in the chat. And one of the things that I'm always keen on is people showing courage. So I want you to just go for it. There's no wrong answer here. Okay, I want you to just go for it and just put down some thoughts in the chat that we can then have a little look at and we'll share with each other. Okay, away you go. You've got 3 minutes to start popping a few things down about what you might coach at each grade. Away you go. I might type my own list at the same time. So.
So while people are doing that, Clarkey, ideally you'd have 2 people per court, so they get maximum hits. But as we know, that it's not always possible with our court availability, and some clubs have more courts than others. What would be the maximum you'd recommend for court?
Yeah, I think ideally, in terms of court allocations, obviously as little as possible, but 3s, 4s are possible. I think more than 4 on a court is very difficult to do some good, impactful work. So I think ideally 2s and 3s is ideal. 4s at a stretch, but I know that it's not always easy to manage court time. It's not as easy to get court time at times which are convenient. So that's but 2 to 3 is the ideal. Okay, 4's doable if you're smart. 5 too much. Cool. We're getting some good stuff through now. Too. Yeah, we're getting some great stuff through now. Love it. Good. Cool. Nice. Nice. Good stuff, folks. We'll just go through a couple of these. I think we've got some really good stuff. I think when you think about E and F grade, the biggest impact that you potentially can make is to improve the serve and improve the return of serve. So I think those 2 things, potentially, if somebody's going to be out in an F grade, is going to be able to return serves more consistently and create pressure with the serve, that might be a really good route to head down. And if you're looking for a 3rd thing, you might be then thinking about using a drop shot off of the back of a really good serve that's in the middle of the court. So if you worked on serve, return, and then maybe a drop at those E and F grades, I think that's a really good place to start if you're going to really make an impact and improve their performance, because that will be the thing that as we know, has a huge impact in those grades. So C grades, we've got a variety of things here that are down. So we've got volley, kill shots, we've got placement, we have correct footwork, serve variations, okay. So at C grade, I think in and around, at D grade, we've got placement, shot selection. I think shot selection is a good one for C and D grades. So where you're looking to get them to identify when they've played a good shot and then the right time to move the ball. At C and D grade, they're skillful enough to do some things with the ball, and the identification of a really good length followed by, okay, now I might need to move the ball with a drop or a boast or looking to volley a little bit. The tactical kind of aspect at C and D grade, I think, really important. The length is really, really important at C and D grade because they are able to do more with the ball. The length piece is obviously very key in that respect. Again, if you head into B grade, you've got return of serve down the line, you've got mental toughness, cutting the ball off, correct shot played. Again, tactics, a little bit more complex tactics might be in order at B grade. Obviously, the physical condition needs to be a little better at that grade of things. So those are things that you might consider at B grade, trying to keep it, how tight can we develop people's ability to keep it a little tighter. And probably, again, at higher levels, drop shot is always, drop and volley drop is always bread and butter. We need people to still be able to play short when the heat is on in the kitchen. We can get a lot of, we've seen it. I might have seen you play a B grade final, actually, Jason. Do you remember playing that?
It was a long time ago, I believe.
Yeah, I remember seeing you play that. I think you played the deciding match, didn't you?
I did actually, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and so when you get into those situations, I think at the higher grades, you're still going to need to be able to take those balls on, have the confidence to do that. So the volley drop and the drop at those higher grades is probably more important. So for you as coaches, if you have to decide, what is my team? What are the things that I need to do in training that are going to help us make a difference when we get there? And so we've gone through a few things there which will allow you to think about how you set up training and what the emphasis might be. Doesn't mean that that's all we do, but it might be a strong emphasis on those 2 or 3 things that you believe are going to make an impact so you can improve the performance of your players. And we'll probably come on to the physical side of it. I think that's next. I think. Makes sense?
Yeah, just picking up on the Clarke, it's trying to keep things simple, isn't it? Simple and impactful, I suppose, the key.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of teams try to get overcomplicated with their sessions and trying to achieve a whole lot of things within a few weeks and achieving nothing in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. The key is the rule with coaching, at performance level or any level really is if you're doing everything, you're doing nothing. So let's hone in on 2 or 3 key things. Talk to your team about it, get their view, get their understanding, and then it's a lot easier if you know what you're trying to achieve to then forge your trainings. If you're thinking, oh, what should we do this week? Which is easily done, particularly if you're the coach that didn't turn up for the meeting and were told you were the coach later on, you hadn't even put your hand up. We want you to be, purposeful in what you do. So, yeah.
Very good. You mentioned the physical conditioning. and it could vary depending on the quality of the quality, the level of the team. But so have some teams take these different approaches or different philosophies around that. What's your recommendations?
Yeah, so I think here is where this area is where some of the mistakes are made. So really important. We want the players to be physically fit and playing at their best over the course of the weekend. And obviously they're going to have to last 4 or 5, potentially 4 or 5 quite hard matches, because obviously the standard is, because they're all in the same grade, is pretty close. So most of the matches are pretty close. So they need to be in good shape. But where some of the mistakes are made is where we try and get players doing stuff which isn't squash specific. Oh, let's go and do a session. Let's go and do a rowing session, or my mate's got a ski machine. Let's go and do a session on that. We don't need to be straying off the court to be doing some of those physical sessions. Okay, we don't need to be sending E and F graders into the gym to be doing some of the physical training. So most of your physical training should revolve around ghosting or some hand feeding, perhaps with the ball as well. And we're looking at keeping those ones fairly short and sharp, okay, rather than going too crazy, trying to flog them to death, essentially. If you can increase their speed a little bit by doing short, sharp sessions, so where you might be doing you might do some ghosting where they do 15 seconds on, 45 off, because they need that amount of time to let their nerve endings recover so they can do what we call repeated speed. So having a long break, 15 on, 45 off, is good for increasing people's speed. And if you can increase your team's speed, if they do 8 sessions, or maybe even do an extra one during the week at another time, or if you've got 2 trainings and you repeat it, you might find that they arrive there a little bit quicker. We don't need to be doing marathon type things, sending them out running. Running's a surefire way to pull a calf if they're not used to running on a regular basis. If they're used to it, it's fine, but sending out people for runs and stuff, most of that stuff we want to keep kind of on court if we can. And most of that might be ghosting, or it might be some fun stuff that promotes speed and agility. So just for example, I've got some kind of bouncy rubber balls that I use. They're about kind of this size, sort of Tennessee ball size, whereby I might have somebody standing on the tee, and they're facing the front wall, I'm facing the back wall, and then I will throw the balls out to the side. They'll throw them back to me, and they're moving laterally across the line, and that's a bit of fun. And you can do that with several people on court at the same time in pairs, working laterally across the line as if they were volleying, and it's a bit of fun with a tool, an implement, and we do that again in short, sharp bursts, essentially. So we're working on their movement while we're doing that. When they're ghosting, we're working on their movement. It's all kind of squash specific. So I think that's the important thing here when you're doing physical training. And also you need to understand that if you're an F grade player, you don't need to be going on long runs. You don't need to be doing long periods of time. They're not having 2-hour matches. They're having 19-minute matches. Okay, the longest match they're probably going to have is going to be half an hour. So they don't need to be doing things over that over and above that kind of length of time. So B grade, potentially, ghosting might be a little bit more involved. You might get them going for a little bit longer, so they might be doing 30 seconds on, 30 off. So a little bit longer on, a little bit less rest, and so they can build their endurance a little bit more. So, B grade, we might do that. C grade, we can C grade and below, we can probably stick with doing short, sharp types of exercises and short, sharp routines, as it were. One I do with the ball, we use a couple of blue dots. We have one drop feeder at the front in the forehand, one drop feeder in the front at the backhand, and they will feed in the ball. The players will be playing straight drop, coming back to the tee, playing a straight drop. And again, we can use that as movement training, and obviously they're hitting a ball at the same time. So we're getting all three things going on. So that's just a few thoughts about that. What I'd like you to do now is I would like you to think about a fun kind of exercise or game that you're aware of, or something that you could do with a group which is short and sharp, and you can repeat it, but a little exercise. And again, I want you to come up with that, pop that into the chat, what kind of exercise or game or routine that you might use to put a bit of training into your program, and with a bit of fun to it. So you've got a couple of minutes to have a little think, and we'll start filling that chat up now. Okay. Away you go.
While people are doing that, Clarke, are you talking about those reaction balls with the use, or just they're uneven?
Yeah, they're good little tools as well. So they're kind of fairly big. Oh, actually, look like this.
Right.
Sorry, I was massaging my back before we started with one of these. So that's what they look like. Yeah, we play a little game with the kids called Dog and Bone, where we roll them and they kind of act like dogs and go and pick them up. But that's another little game that we do. I do it with the ladies and everything, that can be done. Again, it's good, short and sharp game, with some squash movements in it. So another good tool. Okay. Fetch, I call it. Yeah. E-spacing and timing. Cool. Yeah. Mimicking movement of another player by mirroring them and trying to lose them. Lovely. That's great. The old shadow stuff, the shadowing and mirroring is really good stuff. Short, sharp, really good. Boast, drop and lob. That's okay as long as the standard is good enough to kind of complete that. We call it full corner ghosting at each corner, pushing back to the tee. Cool. North, south, east, west. Yeah. One person calling. Great. Cool. Some good ideas coming through. Pyramids. Scary stuff, but very effective, but not too many depending on your grade. And again, we talked about know your team as well. Know your team. So if you've got different ages, you might need to think about how many each group does. So if you've got an older person in your team, it may be that they do a couple less. If you've got a junior in your team who's not fully mature, then they might do a couple less as well. So you need to think about that. What have you got there? In partners reaction light racing. Cool. Yeah. There's some stuff actually that I use called blaze pods. Paul Cole uses them as well, which is a light system that you use on an app on your phone. They're very good, but they're incredibly expensive. So I'm not going to say that you've got to rush out and buy those, because it'll be quite an investment. But some great ideas there. Okay. And you can go on the internet and you can find a million things. Okay. So don't be shy. Go and get on there. YouTube. There's a guy in Egypt, I think, called Dr. Fit. He's got some great ideas as well. So, don't feel like that there's nothing that, I'm not sure what we can do. Just have a little look and you'll find a million things out there that you can do. Just YouTube some squash exercises and you'll find those there. Oh, yeah, those are the ones. So they were saying that they've got the blaze pods. So that conditioning piece, focus around speed type stuff, make it fun. Okay, you can go a bit tougher if it's B grades. Okay, they might do a bit more endurance and a few more reps. of your exercise that you do, but make it squash specific, okay, and don't make it onerous. Your E and F grade ladies and E grade guys, that they're not going to be wanting to do 50 court sprints times 10. That it's not what they're going to do, and we don't want people to arrive or not arrive, should I say, at the event because they're injured. Okay, so keep it squash specific, okay, as much as you can.
Yeah, you actually want people to get there, don't you, Clarkie?
Yes.
Rather than having to ring around the week before trying to find somebody to fill in.
Yeah, I think if you think back to the conversation we've had so far, if people have had a good experience, communication's been good, setup's good, they arrive at the event, they've been working on 2 or 3 key things that are a little better than when they started 8 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. And if they arrive and they feel that they're a little bit quicker as well, a little bit quicker, 2 or 3 improvements, that could tip the game when these matches are all so close. That could be enough to tip 1-2 matches that are going to make the difference to the performance of the team and the confidence of those players, and contribute to their enjoyment even more.
I suppose the other thing, Clark, is understanding what other things that people have got on in their lives too, isn't it? That could impact their ability to get to training or give 100% at training or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and I think going back to kind of everybody's why at the start, you want it to be fun. And if someone can't make training, doesn't mean that they're now dropped from the team or they're banned from playing the first match. Or I've heard some horror stories about stuff that's gone on in and around that. And this isn't the Commonwealth Games. It is a club event, and it's players that just want to have a fantastic time with another group of people and perform as well as they can on that given day. So, yeah, really important that.
Right, like I say, some great ideas come up there as well. So we've talked about the on-court stuff. Now we're looking at selection and playing orders, which can, once again, been involved with several teams that have done this differently. What are your recommendations there?
Okay, this is my favourite, or my least favourite, really. I've seen this has been probably one of the most contentious pieces that we see in teams, and teams that self-destruct, and people decide to not play because they're not playing where they wanted to play in the team, and those kind of things. Is that old adage, there's no I in team. So you need to make a decision in that very, very first meeting. So that very first meeting, that the order is going to be based on the grading list at whatever particular date. If you think that you can predict who's going to play who and what style of play, suits who, that you might come up against, and that this might happen, that might happen, you're pulling seagulls out of the air. It's kind of, you've just got to, you won't have any idea as to how that's actually going to pan out. There's no certainty in any of that whatsoever. So to cut all the rubbish that goes on in and around playing orders and stuff, and I know in the rules, I believe there's within 100 points you can move around in your grade, but you individually as a team need to nail that at the very first meeting about what that looks like. And my recommendation would be to say, obviously you go into the order originally at the grading list date when you put the team in, I think. So I think whatever that date is, whatever the order is within your team on the grading list at that day, and if you've got 2 on the same points, you flip a coin and do it that way. But messing around, I've never seen messing around with an order work ever. It just causes carnage. So my solid advice is to don't muck around with the order. decide at that very first meeting, this is what we're doing, and get that nailed down. So everybody knows, and it's not an issue as you go through training and get closer to the event.
Yeah, just looking at the timelines here, Clarke, I think around the 2nd of June is the cut-off date for those grading lists as well. So a date to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So even moving players around to 100 points difference and stuff, you're playing with fire, and you can affect people's confidence in the way they feel about playing, quite significantly if you do mess around with that stuff. So sort it out right from the beginning.
I think once again, we should keep it simple.
Keep it very simple. Yeah. You will have a much nicer time.
I know I've seen different approaches over the years. We get to the event, and the all-important 90 seconds can be a bit hit and miss, and I've seen all sorts of weird and wonderful things done. But what are your recommendations around that 90 seconds? I know this is an area close to your heart. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so the 90 seconds is very important. You've got 90 seconds to make a difference, which isn't long at all. Given that probably the first 10 to 15 seconds, you need to let the player gather themselves in the first instance. Okay, so that's probably one of the key things that you need to do in that first instance. And what you should try and do is you should try and practice it with your players, whatever system you're going to use at training. So when they're playing games, you go over, have a conversation with them in between games, practice it in training before you get there. Okay, you need to agree things like you've already got some water there, and because you don't want to be chasing people down the corridor and things like that. You want to agree that, okay, we're going to stay close, maximize the time that we have, make sure you got your drink ready, all of that kind of stuff in the first instance. So that's the first 15 seconds is them gathering themselves and having a drink, essentially. Okay. Now, the other key thing that you need to do is not to just tell people. You also need to ask questions. Okay. And some people might not be used to it. Okay. I've seen some incredible approaches in between games. So we might just so Jason, if you want to, you've just come off court, you're panting a little bit. Okay, you just sat down. Here's some example of some of the things that kind of we've seen over that time. So somebody might come in. Okay, it's really tense because the match is really tight. As a coach, you've got to be calm. You're the calm one. Okay, any anxiety or stress that you project will be projected onto your player. So you're the calm one. What I have seen is things like, Jason, what are you doing? Crikey, you know how important this match is. We've been training all this time. You're not doing anything that we wanted. Okay, what's going on? What are you doing?
I'm trying.
Yeah, but you're not doing anything that we said. What did we say that you were going to try and do?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to go out there and leave me alone.
So again, we get a kind of a slightly combative approach. Okay, that can't be used. Okay, so that's an absolute no-no in that respect. So often with a lot of my athletes, I will ask them what their thoughts are first, because I need to know what they're thinking and feeling. So Jason, what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I thought I started pretty well, but it sort of lost my length halfway through. I was a bit frustrated, actually, that one.
Okay. Any particular side? Forehand, backhand?
Yeah, it was the backhand. Yeah, I sort of, I got sort of stuck over that side. I couldn't really produce anything down that side of the court.
Okay. So what can we do to change that What can we do to make that a bit better?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to hit the ball a bit hard, so it's in the side wall. So maybe I can just sort of button off a bit, lift the ball a bit higher, and then try and move him over to the forehand, where I feel like I think I'm a little bit stronger on the forehand side than he is.
Okay, cool. So when you go back on, I want you to really notice the first couple of rallies. I want you to really notice how full you're hitting the ball on the floor. So I want you hitting it high on the wall, nice and full, nice and deep. That allows you to get up and get your court position. Okay, it'll give you a few more opportunities to get in front of your opponent, and also a few more opportunities to move the ball over to the forehand or the odd drop and volley drop yourself. So, but it's critical that you get the fullness of that ball. So first couple of rallies, I want you to really notice that when you get back out there. Okay, mate, you're going well. Let's go.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we're only really talking about one thing there. We're really talking about making sure he's getting the fullness of that ball. We're trying to get him to identify it in the first couple of rallies, so he actually does implement an effort to do it. Because lots of people will go on with a little bit of a plan or a tactic, and after the first rally, they've forgotten. Okay, so that's why you need to get them to talk to you about it in the first instance. Okay, because if I just tell you something, there's a good chance that you'll forget it very, very quickly. But if you relay it to me or tell me what you're thinking about it, there's a much better chance that you're going to retain it. Okay, so don't just go out there and tell. You know, I hear these are the things I hear a lot. You're not volleying enough. If I had $1 for that one, I would. I'd be coming from a bigger place than this. You know, volleying opportunities come from off the back of good length hitting. So just saying you're not volleying enough is not helpful. Okay, there's a way in which we get to those to be allowing ourselves to volley, which is off the back of good length, and we need to think about using the height. We need to think about where the ball's landing on the floor. We need to think about playing our drop shots, because we're chickening out of playing them. Okay, they won't be the words that I would use in a game, but we need to be confident in playing our short game in matches that are tight. Okay, so don't discourage them and say, right, you got to hit everything back, because that won't be helpful either. So you've got to get them to play there as much their natural game. If that involves some short shots, you know, we want to keep encouraging them to do that, even if they make the odd mistake. Okay. So yeah, don't just tell. Ask them how it's feeling, you know, where they're getting success, those types of things, and only one or two things that you can provide as a tactic. Okay, they will not retain any more than one or two. So that makes sense.
I know, Clarke, from my experience, saw one young fellow that hadn't worked with him before, and he wandered off down the hallway, and I sat down next to him with a big list of things. We've got 20 things on his list. And said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, these are all the things that I'm working on." And I said, "Oh, you just get yourself confused." But there are times too, like we said earlier, I think you need to practice that Q&A approach, don't you? Make sure the players are actually familiar and comfortable with that approach, because if they're not used to it, they'll wonder what's going on.
Yes, and that's where you practice it in training.
Yeah.
You know, and then you'll get a much better conversation. You'll get a much better effort to implement that tactic, because it'll be embedded in them rather than you just telling. You know, if I go back to the days when our parents, you know what it's like when you're a teenager, your parent tells you what to do. You definitely don't want to do. That's what you don't want to do. You know, so it's not about telling people what to do. Coaching's not that. Okay, it's about understanding, you know, how they're thinking and feeling, understand what they're thinking about what's going on, and then you can kind of what's the word I'm after? You can kind of reinforce that with them. So, ideally you want them to come up with their own solutions a bit, and you reinforce it. If they're completely missing what's an obvious thing, then you would bring that in. So, hey, I've noticed that they're catching you out in this area here. You're leaving it there, and they're playing that nasty trickle boast that looks like their favourite shot. Let's not leave them there on a regular basis. Let's keep them away from there for a bit. So, and that's the way you can approach it. Hey, I've noticed this. Have you noticed it? And that's a way in which you can get your message across. But you're the calm one, okay? You've got to stay calm, and so not to project any of that, because people that play Super Champs, it really is like as much as it isn't the Commonwealth Games, it's kind of the club version of it, where you're playing in this team and there's kind of pressure to play for your team, and people deal with that in different ways. And we want to make that as calming for them as possible, because some people will be more anxious than others in these situations.
Okay, what would you be advice be, the player that you're working with or coaching there is playing out of their tree, the opposition's playing out of the having a real good ding-dong battle, and you just don't know what advice, because they're doing everything the best they can. What's your approach to, do you go down more than motivational or supportive conversation, or do you stick to sort of a technical?
Yeah. So if you don't need to try and change things and put in a specific tactic and those kind of things, it's a reiteration. Usually I'll try and pick one or two things that have happened late in the game. So I might say, remember that rally a couple of rallies ago when you pinned them really deep and then you just stepped across, cut out that volley drop, set that rally up beautifully. More of the same. I want you to keep doing the same kind of things, but we'll pick out one or two examples, as it were, which is fresh in the memory, and to reiterate what you want to occur. So it'll be, reiterating something that's that's already happened, rather than trying to change the tactics. Or, if it's going well, you don't want to confuse them by changing too much. If it's going well, you might want to leave it alone a little bit. Yeah. So
even if they've lost the set.
Yeah, sometimes they might lose the set. I had one of the lads at the weekend lost the first set, lost the second set, but by midway through the second set, we could see that his opponent was hurting a lot, and he said, "No, I want you to keep playing in the same way, even though it's 2-love down. Keep playing in the same way. Physically, he was going to get him." And physically he won 3-2, and by the halfway through the fourth he'd virtually given up, so because he just couldn't move anymore. So bit like us from the start. So but yeah, so there's a couple of thoughts in and around that. Probably one thing as coaches and managers that you might do as well is just check in each morning how a player is. But yeah, all good to play. Just making sure, because you're just checking in on their physical condition, that they've got no niggles, or they're really, really sore, or they've got a little pull or something. Just check in on them and just check in. How's the body today? And just check in with them. You usually carry reserves, so if someone is injured, you don't want to play someone injured. That's not helpful to anybody. The one thing you don't ever ask about is sleep, though. How'd you sleep last night? We never ask about that. It can have quite a huge mental consequence on people that are playing big matches the following day. So I know we could kind of talk in a bit more high performance here, but we generally don't talk about how they slept, because invariably if they've got a big match the next day, they don't sleep that well.
So, some of the teams I played with, people didn't sleep, so.
Yeah. So, and some of them might have done that by choice. So if they're out having fun. So.
Hey, Clarke, we'll come sort of near the end here, actually. But what about after the event, post the event? Are we all done, and
Yeah, so we're not all done. So post event, your job as the coach and the manager is to celebrate with the players. Okay. But obviously, if you've done well and performed above, you can make those incredibly memorable times post, which will just contribute to everybody's memories around that. If you've functioned really well from the start, you've got everything in place, you're all on the same page, accommodation's sweet, food's sweet, you've had some great performances, you had a great time, you then need to celebrate with the team and the players collectively. Okay. No sliding off if it's not your thing. We want you to celebrate with the players collectively and celebrate the successes that each of them have had and stay in the moment, as it were. So particularly if you do get success, you'll remember those moments for a very, very long time, for the rest of your life, actually, when you're in those team settings, if you've worked towards something and achieved something really cool. So, it's important that you do celebrate with the players. Post, what you could do post the event, so you're all recovered from your hangovers. A week later, it might be flick everyone a quick email. How did we do? What did we, the setup last season for that? What did we do? What did we learn? What can we do better for next season? As the coach, you want to just gather some information for your own development about what worked well and what didn't, and what you learned, what everybody learned from that experience, and you'll get we want you to get some rich feedback there that you can use as a starting point for next time that you step out and do that job, whether you're a manager again or a coach. Okay. And of course you can, if you're got good relationships with those players, you can give them a couple of things to work on based on the event if you want to as well, which I'm sure that they would appreciate. Probably need to think about working on your backhand volley drop, or whatever it might be, a couple of work-ons, and that kind of is kind of your wrap up, in and around that, ready for next year.
Right. Thanks, Clarkey. So a couple of key things that came out for me really was actually discussions around the training and managing who you've got in your team. Your 60-year-old and your 15-year-old are going to be quite different, and sometimes I've seen and experienced everybody gets treated the same, and actually understanding that we're all coming from different stages of development as well. So I think that's a key thing that's come out for me. I'm conscious of time, but if you're able to hang around for a little bit, Clarkey, we'll take a couple of questions from the chat.
Yeah, go for it.
So if you've got a question, if you'd like to put something in the chat, myself or Clarkey. Waiting for some questions, if there are any. The squashsmart.co.nz. We also have a Teams module in there, online module, which covers a lot of the stuff we've talked about today, actually. But also, you've got the opportunity to download a resource with, I think it's got 150 odd practice activities that you could use for the players as well. So, and a few other bits and pieces of advice on our online module. So, and then you can talk to your district about maybe doing a practical module around the teams, where you can actually go through some of those activities as well. So the coach developer or your district administrator, contact them and see if they can arrange something to have in your district.
Yeah, I think if you done well, if it's kind of if you're reasonably organised and structured, done well, it can be a fantastic experience for everyone involved. As you say, Superchamps is just amazing, amazing event, and as a coach, it's great if you can get involved in that. A few questions coming through. Okay, so
Megan's question.
Yeah, so thoughts on implementing squash fit or new squash fitness regimes? I think good question. I think you would need to talk to your team in terms of time availability. Squash fit, there's some great stuff in the squash fit programs, but again, people's time, effort, and is fitness the key thing, or is there something else that's going to have a bigger impact? So could be a yes, or it could be that, you know, if squash fit, they're expecting to do that 2 or 3 times a week, or they're expecting to do it the once a week when they come to training, you're better off getting them better at squash first than the fitness piece first. So anything that you can improve their squash with first, and fitness probably second in that respect. But there's some good stuff in the squash fit programs, but it's one part of this journey, and that might not be for everyone. So that would be a good conversation at your first meeting. For F grade ladies in the 90s who are playing poorly because of nerves, what to say to get some confidence back? Okay, that's a good one. Tough one. So nerves. So everyone should be nervous. Okay. So you must never tell people don't be nervous. Okay. Cannot tell people that. It is human to be a bit nervous. And before a kind of a match or during a match, there'll be a certain level of anxiety which we need to get to. We need to get to a certain level of arousal, as it were, to perform. And we need to make sure that we are not poo-pooing nerves, essentially, in that respect. Being nervous is human, and we should have a little bit of that. If we don't have them, we'll be too flat, too complacent. We're not up for the match. So I would be talking to your players that you're a lady, you're older lady, that you know, it's good to be nervous. Okay, you should be nervous. You don't need to worry about it. It means you're human. It's a good thing. How do we deal with complaints, protests, or issues with the rules? So I think first and foremost, I think rules-wise, you go back to your district or Squash New Zealand first, Jace.
Yep, yeah, I would recommend that.
Yeah.
So most complaints are probably about team orders and things like that.
Yeah. So I think in the first instance, yeah, any complaints, protests, or issues within the rules, you go back to your district and or Squash New Zealand as you get later down the track once they becomes national. Obviously, if it's within your own team, that's why that first meeting is incredibly important, and laying down kind of the expectations and everybody agreeing on those things. I think that would be a critical thing to do. But yeah, back to your district, and again, try and sort them early if you can, if there's any kind of issues that you need to address, rather than last minute. That can always be difficult to get hold of people at that time. And then Mark's put down, would you try and change something technical for D grade? Technique, if at D, E, and F grade, can make a significant difference. So if there was something specifically, I mean, particularly with the serve or the return, and sometimes if you're doing the return, you might need to work on their actual swing to develop their return. Then, you know, that may be something that I might do. I may work with something technical with a D grade player or team. You know, that might be something we might do. I know it's got hold your shot, great leveler. D grade is probably not the best at that. I probably wouldn't go there with that. That's usually reserved, holding and stuff and deception is probably more of a kind of a higher grade type scenario. So, but if it's something kind of fairly simple technically, then yeah, I'd do that. One of the easy things technically to get people to think about is the drop shot. It's kind of the biggest thing that people get wrong. Everyone thinks a tight drop shot is one that's close to the red line. It's nothing to do with the red line. Tight drop shot is one that's laid in so the ball hits the front wall and then hits the floor first, just before the sidewall. Okay? So a tight drop is, when we talk about a tight drop, it's always about the closeness to the sidewall is what we're looking to manage. So we're looking to manage the angle on the way in. So that means your opponent has real difficulty scraping it off the wall when they're coming in from behind a ball. So that's an easy one to think about. If you're coaching a drop shot, you're really getting them to focus in on the angle so that when they come round and they think, oh, I should play a drop shot here, really. Okay, nice angle on it, trying to get a nice angle. So they're thinking about something positive when they're playing their short balls, rather than, oh, it's got to be low. Oh, I might hit this in the tin. They start worrying about the tin and how close it is to the tin and the line. And we want a positive. So ball comes around, drops on. Oh, good angle, in. Positive thinking, not, oh, mustn't hit this down. Because they're thinking about keeping it low to the red line. I've seen some of the biggest moments in squash are decided by a ball that isn't a good drop shot in terms of the height, but it's a good drop shot in terms of the closeness to the wall, and it's won a lot of matches and wins a lot more points than it being low. Okay, so it's all about the tightness if you can. Just an easy technical thing with players to change.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Clarke. Looks like sort of coming near the end there. But you even see the top players actually will pop a ball up just to get the ball back in play, won't they? And get it tight. That gives them time to get reset.
Yeah. It's absolutely key. So probably just one last thing from me, if it's okay, Jason. I kind of have this thing around information, knowledge, wisdom, because what you've heard tonight is just information. It only becomes knowledge once you kind of act on that and you do something with something that you've heard tonight. And then it only becomes wisdom once you reflect on what you did and share it with others, which is for Dan the track. But just for tonight, if you could finish by putting in one thing in the chat that you think, okay, I'm going to try and maybe do that, or I'm going to have a go at that. Is there one thing that you've heard on this thing tonight that you're going to turn into knowledge? Okay, so if you leave here and do nothing with anything we've said, all we've given you is just some information. And if you want to increase your knowledge, you have to act on it. Cool. Nice.
Team meeting. Yeah.
Nice. Good. Good stuff.
The meeting of the 90 seconds seemed pretty popular.
Yeah, can really make a difference. Yeah, I mean, you can win matches in that 90 seconds, no problem. Cool. I'm not sure, but the gin, is that a Kiwi saying I'm not familiar with?
I'm not too sure it's a drink.
Cool. Oh, buy the gin. Don't forget that. No, there's some great feedback there. Okay, there's some great feedback. So it's great that if you've all taken something that you're going to turn into knowledge, that's literally how we improve. Okay, it's great for you to go out there and try and experiment these things. So yeah, fantastic, good.
And probably just one final thing for me, getting some great sort of feedback, what people are going to take away. This is the first one of these we've done. I'm also interested in what other topics you'd like us to do more of them, and what sort of topics would be useful for people as well. So we can actually design these webinars for the needs of the community. So if anything specific you'd like to you're interested in, please chuck it in the chat, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that before we sign off. Getting a couple of things in there.
Cool.
Daniel, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Araya. Yep, missing you guys too.
Awesome.
Cool. Cool.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming along tonight. Thanks, Clarkey, for your wisdom and your experience and sharing that with the group. And no doubt we'll get you on again soon, and I'll see you soon, probably at in Tauranga next, and we'll share some other things and provide some other opportunities for people to engage.
Yeah, and if ever you see me floating around at tournaments, feel free to come up and ask any questions that you might have as well. So I'll be around the traps at different times. So yeah, just tap me up and say, hey, I was on the webinar, and just ask the question, no problems.
Yep, and same here. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to email me at jason@squashnz.co.nz. I'll be happy to respond to any questions or requests that you have. So thank you very much. We'll call it a night, but thanks for your time, and good luck with your teams, and good luck with your coaching as well. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks everyone for coming on and your contribution. Thanks.